Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. Joining me this week, we're doing another Fireside Chats episode with just Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Trev?
Doing good. Enjoying the self-imposed social distancing I've got going on that will come to an end tomorrow when I go back into work because we don't have any kind of policy in place or anything yet. So I'll be back downtown Phoenix, hopefully trying to avoid getting any kind of sickness or anything going around. How about you?
Yeah, it's been a weird. Again, we'll go back to work tomorrow because my work has kind of started to do stuff, but it's still open and running. So yeah, it's been a strange weekend. This weekend has been good. Saw Emma, as we will talk about very shortly, again today. And otherwise, it's been kind of a chill, very nice kind of weekend, I think.
Cool. Well, if you enjoy what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast everywhere you can. If you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. No new patrons to welcome to the community today, but if you did join, this is where we would give you a little shout out. So yeah, let's dive right in to kind of the probably the big topic of the show in what I joked is like a follow up to the Little Women spoiler cast that we talked about in an episode a month or so back. Logan and I went and saw Emma. And Logan, who has just seen it a second time as of recording. So what'd you think about Emma there, Logan? Obviously, you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think for me, it's in the running for being my favorite adaptation of Jane Austen novel, I think, and story. There was, I can't take credit for it, there was a article I was reading, and I forget the site it was on, that kind of had described Emma before I'd seen it, or saw it, as the adaptation, the film of Jane Austen novel that kind of finally manages to really capture her sense of humor and her wit, and I think the cleverness of her writing style. And I think watching Emma, you really get that. Like, it is just a kind of wickedly clever and funny, very tongue-in-cheek story, with like a lot of heart to it, admittedly, but is one that is just so funny and I think so clever and really kind of captures, I think, what Jane Austen was trying to do with the characters and do with the story. And yeah, it's great. Like, it is in the running for being one of my favorite films I've seen so far in 2020. Anna Taylor-Joy is fantastic and phenomenal as always, and the rest of the cast kind of follows suit. Johnny Flynn as Mr. Knightley. Come on now, kids.
Yeah, I went and saw it. This is one like my only real exposure to like Jane Austen and Emily Bronte and that kind of era of Elizabethan, not even Elizabethan, but like English writing is I remember reading like Wuthering Heights in high school, and then I've seen like smatterings of Pride and Prejudice or stuff like that. But Emma, I had never been really exposed to, and I hadn't even been exposed to, or I haven't seen obviously the biggest comparison that a lot of people will make is that the movie Clueless. The quintessential 90s movie is based on the novel Emma, and that kind of story. But I'd never watched that. It came out probably too early for me to really care about something like that. So it is too early 90s. Like, I remember Alicia Silverstone being a big thing and stuff, but it was just not what I wasn't going to like rom-coms at the time or whatever. I was still in animated movies, action or something like that. So and then I've just never circled back around to watching it because now when I think of Clueless, I think of like, oh, that is going to remind me just how 90s the movie is from everything I've seen about it. So I went into this kind of like I'd seen this is one of those movies that like it seemed every movie at the Alamo was basically playing a trailer for Emma beforehand. And I was like, oh, like it seems like they're trying to do some kind of like quirky, at least the trailer had kind of cut it as like a quirky take on this era, something like that. So I was like, I'm intrigued, and I've got Alamo season pass now, so I'll go check it out. Really knowing almost nothing about it outside of kind of the big broad strokes of the story and on Anya Taylor-Joy being kind of the central character, and like I guess Bill Nighy. Those are the only two people from this film that I recognized or knew from anything else prior. So, but yeah, so everybody else was basically like a delightful surprise, and I really enjoyed it as well. So what got you guys to go back and see it a second time?
I think it's a ton, like that's the thing, like walking out of the theater today was the thing, which again being like, it's just a ton of fun, right? Like I think there's something to be said for a movie that just leaves you kind of laughing and just smiling and just has such, I think, charm. And Emma is one that I think oozes it, right? Like almost from the opening, like title, like credits, and kind of what's like the word splash on the screen, and like given its description of Emma, it's just like, this is going to be a ton of fun. But then watching it today was that thing too of like, also appreciating the fact that like Emma is legitimately a really well made film, like especially for me at least from like a cinematography perspective. Like there's a shot right as kind of her like name splashes on screen where like Auntie LaJoy is walking through the two M's, and I'm like, that's a really cool shot. And like through like a tunnel in her house, and like there are numerous moments in the film of Anna Taylor-Joy or any of the characters kind of walking and kind of doing like these like side profile shots, right? And my girlfriend mentioned the fact that like she loved all of those, like how all those scenes are framed, just like their profiles walking through like a field or walking through the houses. And I think just it's a great Jane Austen novel. It's a really, really fun movie. I think really clever movie, but also it's just a legitimately really great, well-made movie. And I think what it does with its source material is, for me at least, like really fun and clever as well. And I think that's what brings people to go back in as well. Like I know that it's kind of weirdness and kind of twist on the formula, and also on Anna Taylor-Joy. Like I've seen a lot of people kind of on our timelines really, really love it and like kind of rave about it. And I think that like George Cruz, my P, talked about it, like it being like his like favorite film he's seen so far this year. Like it just has, I don't know, like charm is really the only kind of thing of it. It just has like such charm to it, I think, and just such a joy to it, and like an unabashed like feeling of kind of having fun in every moment. That yeah, like I feel like it's a movie that I will definitely like watch even again. Maybe not in theaters, but certainly at home.
Yeah, it's one of those that like I thought was such a very just well-made movie watching it myself. Yeah. In particular, the thing that stood out to me most from like a technical stance was the costumes and the hair and makeup. I will be very incredibly like annoyed if this somehow doesn't get nominated.
There's no way it doesn't.
Next year's Oscars and stuff in favor of some stupid Suicide Squad or something like that. The fact that because that's what will inevitably happen, in the same way that like so many of the period pieces got overlooked in last year's awards, but like every time she's on screen, like Anya Taylor-Joy is wearing this like new and fantastical kind of outfit. I was just like, wow, like whoever did the costumes on this. And I was maybe prepped for this a little bit because the Alamo pre-show was, touting costume design over the years and all that kind of stuff. So it was certainly focusing my attention on that, but everything was blowing, like her hair style in every various scene, and all the glitz and glamour that like that character has throughout the story. I was very enamored by. Mm-hmm. And then at the core, she has such a great central performance that even when like she's making all the wrong decisions, and she's making all the wrong decisions because you maybe know romantic comedy formulas that this helped kind of like establish, and you just don't think about it as like this was one of the early precursors to every rom-com kind of formula we know since.
I definitely had that moment watching it where like I had that relation of like, because I was like with her and like Knightley's kind of love story, and kind of like they're like antagonists who are kind of drawn together, and it's just like this very kind of charming thing. And like I think one of my favorite versions of that story. And then about 2/3 of the film, I was like, but actually, is this one of the first stories to have done this kind of thing? And the thing like, all right, this actually could have been like one that kind of set the mold for that kind of like a love story being told. And I was like that weird thing like, oh right, this is a 200-plus-year-old story that we're kind of seeing now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just kind of one of those like, oh, like the formula here is so good, and that's why it has lasted the test of time.
Yeah.
And that's why we see it, aped in more modern,
Yeah.
pop culture, and if not in direct Emma adaptations, is still in like the general rom-com scene that like
When Harry Met Sally is in
yeah,
there,
exactly.
Like, well,
Yeah, that would certainly be one of the other most notable big examples of this of the character, like the characters butting heads.
Yep.
That's our first interaction with them.
Every
and then-
TV sitcom ever, basically.
exactly,
Will they,
like
won't they?
every will they won't they.
Yeah.
Your Sam and Diane's, your maybe
Yeah.
like I would like Pam and Jim didn't butt heads or whatever, but
Elliot and
yeah.
JD from Scrubs, right? Like,
yeah, there you go. So yeah, the like and as somebody who didn't know anything about Johnny Flynn going into this, I was just like, oh, okay. Like the first thing we see of him is like him riding up into the house, and then like him getting stripped down by his manservant or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, we're just seeing
Butt.
this guy's butt here. Okay, cool. Like especially as somebody who I spent a time last year kind of rewatching or watching all of Downton Abbey. This was very much giving me like those. I felt like it was coming home to Downton Abbey kind of vibes,
Sure.
just because of obviously the setting and the glitz and glamour and grandiosity of it. But like, yeah, it was just also just incredibly beautifully shot. And I had a hard time kind of being able to pinpoint what Knightley's like relationship to the family was at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't I was like, I don't quite get like the dynamic outside of he's there seeing Mr. Woodhouse, Bill Nighy's character, the father kind of, but I was like, I don't quite get the dynamic. And then when they mention something to the effect of we're not like really siblings or whatever, I was like, oh, am I remembering that from like what I know of Clueless, in that they're like stepbrother, like Paul Rudd's character in Clueless is the stepbrother or something like that? Is that what this dynamic is? And I still like don't, to the end, I still, having not read Emma, I don't quite have like the tie on that, but I was like, I don't care, I'm still along for the ride. These two are just charming together, and when he finally kind of dresses her down for her like outburst faux pas, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Absolutely. And just how like she knew she had fucked up, and he doesn't let her get away with it. I very much like love that, and she is affected appropriately by it. It was really just great seeing like all of the performers here. But yeah, Bill Nighy in particular, he was like one of the big names, because even Anya Taylor-Joy I really only know from like Split and Glass. I don't think I've seen her in a lot of other stuff outside. Like I see her name around, but I don't think I've actually seen her in anything else that she's done. But she's very much like one of those keep my eye on, because she's got some great talent kind of actresses. So yeah, like Bill Nighy was the biggest star I knew going into this one. And he's delightful as well. But I really enjoyed Johnny Flynn as Knightley. The kind of not seen for most of the movie Frank Churchill, so like this mystery's built up around him. I was like, oh, who's this guy going to end up like being, and what's his deal going to end up being? And I enjoyed how that kind of plays out as well. But it was more so that he was just set up to be this big like grandiose thing that I was like, oh, okay. Like expectations versus reality, that
sure,
whole meme kind of format. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Emma. It's like a beautiful execution of a well-told story. And a fabulous period piece. Certainly, I liken it to Little Women, because we talked about that extensively on the show a few weeks back. This doesn't play around with like the narrative structure in the way that Little Women did. This is much more of I think a straightforward adaptation. And admittedly, since I haven't read the books, I don't know what they change, what they don't change, how true to the source material it is.
Shravia said that it's pretty spot on, is what she had said actually. Like one thing I didn't know, because I've never read Emma either, is that like it doing like The Last of Us like season by season by season formula thing, and I was like, oh okay, yeah, like this is a cool version.
That's definitely something, because when I went and saw it, I know that you had seen it like an hour or two earlier. So when they were doing that, I definitely thought of you, given your love of The Last of Us.
They even do like literally like it's basically just like a month sooner than or season sooner than the last one did it, where it goes and ends in summer instead of ending in spring. And I was like, this is a cool way to do this story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely left me a little more disoriented, I think, than like Little Women did, in that I don't know how much time has passed. I know that it is less than 3 months in between certain moments and stuff, but
sure.
there were some things where I was just like, I don't have a great sense of if it's been a day since such and such an event happened, or if it's been weeks or a month or whatever. But ultimately, like that, none of that really matters in the grand scheme of the story that they're telling. It was just kind of more of my own curiosity of, are they, how are they reacting to this news that so-and-so has gone off and gotten married? Is it something that just happened, or is it something that happened weeks ago? And they're just now finding out about it. That was really kind of my only minor gripes in terms of kind of how they told the story. But again, ultimately, like such a small, not worth even nitpicking really kind of factor.
It is.
So
it is interesting too, in the vein of like the Downton Abbey connection, like you made, where it is because this is kind of set in like the high period, right? Like kind of like the heyday of this kind of era of English aristocracy, kind of, and like lords and ladies and like gentlemen kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas Downton Abbey very much is the end of that era. It's kind of captioned as it kind of gasped its last breath, and so to kind of see it from this angle and kind of all of its glory and absurdities and kind of eccentricities was like a really cool twist, right? And because like Little Women obviously isn't kind of a very different world than this is and Downton Abbey is. And so from that vein, it is cool to be like, yeah, like this is just when everything is just kind of bananas. And there are a few lines which like, wow, they're just like cutting down people who are not on the same level as him. And I really love to get to see it from like that angle.
Yeah, there was like the class dynamics a little bit there of, so and so would never even give this other person a second thought chance, or something like that. I was like, like that helped me hone in a little bit on like kind of the relationship levels, but at the same time, like I guess the relationship between Emma and her companion Harriet Smith is more like Harriet was like her ward or something like that. Does that seem like a fair comparison? Because she's kind of like she's from almost an orphanage where she doesn't know who she could be highborn, she could be lowborn. She doesn't know. Nobody knows until kind of it's revealed, on her 18th birthday or whatever. Yeah. So it was one of those. I was just like, oh, this is a weird. Like I still don't quite get why Emma is friends with that person. But
I think it's just
doesn't
like
really matter. It almost felt like she was doing her charity or something, or just Emma needed a companion because otherwise she's lounging around in Waller and Splendor.
Her previous kind of like basically mother figure had left.
Yeah.
So she needed kind of somebody to kind of be there. But it is the irony in that is that like the Emma Harriet relationship is like in the run of being my favorite in the film. Like it's so well done. And like I think the layers and kind of the evolution of like Harriet herself over time to where like I think it's really for me clever the fact that every time Harriet kind of is in a serious relationship with or like wanted to be in a serious relationship with like another male figure, she kind of goes to Emma for advice again and again and again, all the way up to kind of the final fight over Mr. kind of Knightley. But then when when Harriet does kind of finally get married, it's just her walking in and saying she did the thing, right? She doesn't really ask Emma's permission, doesn't really say anything to Emma, she just did the thing at the end of the film. And like just like that arc, right? And like she's in one of my favorite scenes in the film, which is the dance and just everything that encompasses that, right? And like Mr. Knightley walking over to Harriet and like asking her to dance after she was rejected by like the dickhole of the Reverend. And like it was such a great moment being like, dude, Mr. Knightley is like the shit, guys, right? Everybody should be standing him. Fuck Mr. Darcy.
Agree. Fuck Mr. Darcy.
Like we're all here for Mr. Knightley. He's such a because he's just genuinely just like a really good dude. That's the thing. Like his whole thing is that like he doesn't have like balls and dance. Is at like his like estate because he's like actually caring for like all the farmers on his land. Is like one of the lines they throw out, and it's like, hey, he's just out here using his money in like positive ways and not ostentatious like castles and shit.
Yeah.
And
That was
even like his proposal was like super sweet, and like I loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, that was one of the like most stark comparisons I made to Downton Abbey in my own head. Was like after things go awry with him and Emma at some point, and he's basically like sitting, and we see him in his manor with like just sheets over everything, and he's clearly not using it for entertaining and stuff. I was thinking of the in Downton Abbey kind of the end days where they are trying to use their resources to better their community rather than themselves even. So I was like, oh, like that's what he's been doing. Cool. I get that. I appreciate that. I have a better read on this character. He is more generous because he didn't really like, he got the wealth, but not even by like design or whatever. He just kind of lucked into it. So it very much was like, he felt like it wasn't his to keep maybe. So yeah. And I loved, again, going back to that dance scene, I love that it sets up kind of the case of, and again, this would have been a very early example of this kind of storytelling, but like the misunderstandings that happen as a result of that, and Emma thinking, you know, who's in love with who and all that stuff. She's just misreading the signs because of that, you know, stereotypical thing. Everybody's being vague enough that that it leaves it open to interpretation. But so it was again, I could see where this was going, but it was executed so well that I didn't care that I could see where it was going, and I had that thing in the back of my mind going like, I know where this is going because of stories like this, because this helped lay the groundwork for the, you know, hundreds of times I've seen these kinds of stories played out in the time since. So like, yeah, really enjoyed it.
The dance too, like, culminated in like what is like my favorite part, like my favorite scene in the movie even, is just like him literally running after her carriage all the way back to the place, and then just like her looking down the shot of him in her courtyard and like running out, and just like that silent of them together before everything kind of like is interrupted. But like that shot is like, yo, these kids are gonna like, all right guys, we got this. Like it's like such a great like mutual realization on their end that they're each in love with the other person, and the other person kind of like knows it now, and then not being able to kind of fulfill that for another season. But it was such a good, just like quiet, like again, like wordless shot of just like longing and romance and love, and it was like lit. Like that whole dance, I think, does kind of feel like the climax almost, because it is the unfold and unraveling of like all of the expectations of like who likes who and who doesn't like who kind of thing. And you kind of see everybody match up with who they're going to match up with, right? Like Mr. Churchill is with Mrs. Bates' niece, Jane Fairfax, there it is. And Emma ends up with Mr. Knightley, and like a great exchange, right? Like she gets to see him for kind of being such a great guy that he actually kind of has been the whole time. And they have their conversation in like the hallway before they actually go dancing. And like everything about it is such a great, like, I think it unpacks where the movie kind of had been and then like shoves it into that next act. But also, I do just want to give a final shout out to, like, again, Emma and her dad and Mr. Knightley all in the study at the very end of the movie, and then just them like pulling in the curtains so the dad can hide from view. It's such a great, again, like the movie being very funny and also very sweet at the same time.
Yeah, I think one of the impactful things that happens in that dance scene is that it is such a beautiful juxtaposition compared to the rest of the film that is wide open spaces or grandiose halls. The fact that it is like point. In an inn, every like all of the storylines are really kind of thrown into like a crammed space where they have nowhere else to go. They're forced to confront each other. And we see that, you know, play out, and then it kind of explodes back out into the world again for kind of the last act of the film.
That's a great point.
But yeah, I think that's kind of it. It's another reason that scene stands out, apart from everything else, is because it's not happening in, you know, somebody's drawing room or something like, or you know, out in the fields or whatever. It is like everybody's in this dimly lit hall, having a great time, having a dance, you know, seats, you know, leaned up against the sides or whatever. But yeah, really, really great film.
Yeah,
I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Really glad I got to go see it. definitely recommend if you.
Yeah, everybody go watch Emma. Yeah,
Go watch Emma. There will probably be plenty of space at the theaters. You can probably sit, nowhere near anybody else, not interact with anybody, not risk catching anything.
Is reserving seats in between people, so you can't be too close to people now. Apparently, which we realized today. Yeah.
I did not. I had not seen that.
When we were buying our tickets, they're doing like certain things. You can't be like next to people. Exactly.
Cool. Good to know. So one of the things I just finished, and I'll probably work on getting a review up this week that I wanted to talk about, is Ori and the Will of the Wisps.
Yeah, I've seen the Twitter thread, Trev.
Yeah, seen the Twitter thread. Overall, it's going to be weird because it is a beautiful, fantastic game. It is an incredible Metroidvania style action adventure game, but it just running on a regular Xbox One, it had so many performance issues. By all told, by the time I beat the game, it had crashed 5 times. Like, it crashed to the main screen. I had to basically load the game back up. Didn't lose significant progress or anything like that, so that was a relief. But yeah, just suddenly music, and I could always tell when it was oh, the game's about to crash because the music cut out. Every other time where the game would start to chug, or I'd have freeze frames and stuff like that I'd have to push through, the music kept going. But anytime the music cut out, I was like, oh, and the game's about to crash, and then yep, there it goes, and I'm back at the home screen. So 5 times to beat the game. And then because I was still enjoying the game well enough, and most of this all happened yesterday as we were recording, because I basically took pretty much all of my Saturday to play through and finish the game. I had done most of the getting all the collectibles and stuff along the way, so I had some cleanup to do. Spent another couple hours playing it, but in those couple hours, just getting the last collectibles to 100% the game, crashed 2 more times. So 7 times total on my route to 100%ing, and I've talked to a couple people online, because people are like, oh, I played Gears or something and the cutscenes weren't that bad. And I'm like, there's a very distinct difference between cutscenes chugging a little bit in engine for a game, but then the gameplay, of the shooting in Gears or something being fine, versus you doing a tense platforming sequence, because that's what Ori has and is well known for from the first game. There are tense platforming sequences where you're outrunning a flood of water or a monster or something like that, and you basically have to just kind of dart through the level in one go, or you'll restart. And so when that's happening and there's so much going on the screen that the game starts chugging and freezing and throwing off the rhythm that you're trying to establish, that really impacts the game in the end. So it's going to be really hard to kind of weigh those two things against one another, recognizing that there are people that are playing this on PC, for example, that aren't encountering any of these issues that I encountered. So it was frustrating, but in the grand scheme of things, still a very fun, great game when it was working well. And over my 30 hours or so with the game, 7 crashes and a handful more hiccups and freezes and performance issues probably doesn't amount to that much of a percentage breakdown but it was noticeable, given the type of game that it is, and just it more than anything else has made me realize kind of the inherent fallacy of the Xbox campaign that they're saying of any game that comes out on the Xbox will be an Xbox game, whether you play it on Xbox, Xbox One X, the One S, or the Series X. You can the idea that there will be games coming out at the end of this year that you can still quote unquote play on Xbox is yeah, you can, but it's not designed for that experience, and that experience suffers so greatly that it's almost a forced upgrade. It basically is if you really want this, if you want to experience this the way that it's meant to be experienced, yeah, you need to buy an Xbox One X or a Series X or something like that. Made me start this is admittedly, because I'm not playing my Xbox all that often, this was the first time where I was oh yeah, that's a great sales pitch that they can have, but the reality of that situation is a far less flattering scenario, I think.
It's it's disappointing too because I think there was so much buzz around this game too after. Well, put it better, like I think this could have been a big coming out party for Ori, where I feel like the first Ori game came out and did well, did good, like did okay, but like I feel like its buzz kind of happened over the ensuing years, like it kind of built more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
think Ori, like the original Ori, came out when the Xbox was just like down and out and didn't have a huge install base. So it almost felt like it feels like a companion to like Sunset Overdrive, where it's like
Yes.
beloved by the people who played it, but not enough people played it. And now that Ori's getting out there on like Switch and stuff, it's like, oh, more people are getting exposed to this game, so that's great.
And it could have been the coming out party, but in, like the fact that it has such kind of performance issues, it feels like kind of an unfortunately timed stumble, rather than they could have really kind of had a big launch for Ori and kind of had to really make a splash. And so, like, in that vein, it's a shame. I still just want to play these games on PlayStation. But
there is that as well, that not going to happen.
yeah,
because it flashes out, Moon Studios, an Xbox game studio or something like that.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. But like, ultimately, I'm happy to hear that it like is as like a narrative campaign good, even if it has all the issues. Like, do you think that it is? I'm curious. Like, I guess it'll be in the review. Stay tuned for Trevor Strike's review on Ori. But like, I'm curious if it is something that like how much like the performance issues detract from really being able to like soak in the narrative, right? Because like for me, the game that I think of the most when I think of like this kind of issue is like Firewatch, where like I really enjoyed Firewatch. Like I really loved. Well, I didn't love Firewatch, but I really enjoyed Firewatch. But I was always kind of kept being taken out of it by the performance issues when I reviewed it. Because at launch they were really quite pronounced, and that game crashed on me multiple times. There was a lot of like slowdown and stuttering and like freezing, and so like I ultimately didn't love Firewatch and still don't love Firewatch to kind of the for everybody else. And even after going back and playing the game again, I'm like, I just feel like I wanted to like it more than I did. And I wonder if you think that Ori's kind of in that boat for you.
It's interesting. The most direct comparison I can make is After Party, which I reviewed for the site last year, which that one, and like I gave that one a 5.5 because it was so hindered by performance issues that it impeded the story, and I lost in one of my playthroughs, I lost like 8 hours of progress or something like that. That was incredibly unnerving and frustrating. But it was more like it didn't get that just because of the performance issues. It got it because of like I looked at it and like it was more of a, it's not doing that much technically to really demand or warrant this level of performance issues, or at least in my perception. Obviously, not working on games, not working behind the scenes, I don't know all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes, but it felt like, based on what I was seeing and how the game was playing, that other games that are doing more don't struggle as nearly as much. So to kind of like bring it into the Ori conversation, Ori is a fantastically beautiful game, and there's stuff going on in the backgrounds of scenes that like I can see why it's chugging, I can understand why it's chugging, and I just wish maybe some of the design choices weren't as detailed as they were to allow for a smoother experience or something like that. Or I mean, especially because the biggest issue of Ori seems to be tied to going in and out of the map. And if I didn't have to do that especially in cleaning up, to like go and figure out where I'm going or where the collectibles and stuff were, like I imagine I would have had a much smoother process. But when I was hopping into the map, trying to basically see, okay, I need to go, up 2 or 3 areas and then over 3 areas and then down 2, and then having to check that path to make sure I was still going like the right way 2 or 3 times on that journey. Like that was where the chug really would start, is every kind of subsequent, let me hop in real quick, look at this, let me check the path, okay, I'm going back out. It would stutter a little bit, and something was going on in the background that was kind of slowing down the processing. So, like, it made sense more in Ori as to why there was a struggle going on, because it is popping into like a 2D map and then backing out to this beautifully designed 3D world. Going in and out of that was taxing on the system, I guess. And also a lot of times there's a ton of stuff just going on screen. Which ties a little bit to another one of my minor gripes of the game, is that Ori takes up such a small space of the screen a lot of the time while you're playing this. Like, he is such a small figure compared to the world that's going on, that a lot of times I was like losing where I was on the screen, or I couldn't see Ori compared to like the enemies I was fighting. Or even in some of the backgrounds, Ori is a stark white character, and in the first game, he stood out against a dark forest, filled with blacks and dark blues and greens and stuff like that. In this game, there are snow levels, and there are areas where like the background is a beautiful lake or water or something like that. So there are brighter scenes that he is being like put in front of, and I was losing him in a lot of those sequences. I just couldn't see where I was on my big screen TV, which is admittedly like a super first world problem or whatever, but still it made tracking him and the action of the game a little bit tougher as a result. Still phenomenally beautiful, but it's something else that I think like impacted my overall kind of takeaways of the game. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of where I end up shaking out on this, and how much the performance issues really like are a factor, or and it's one of those I'm struggling with as I talk about it with people online. I'm like, this is the experience I had, and I will be very open about that experience. It might not affect the end score. I may basically do what a lot of other what we see a lot of other people do, and try and give them the benefit of the doubt that future like people playing this 6 months from now, all these things might be patched out. It might be running so much smoother that it doesn't matter, like that I had 7 crashes when I played it.
Sure.
Or if you're playing it on PC or an Xbox One X and wouldn't encounter these same issues, those are like, do I weigh that against the ultimate score of the game, or try and judge the game as it's trying to am I trying to judge the game in its ideal form, or in the form that I ended up playing it in? Who knows? So but it's certainly I will reference all of this stuff in my review as I write it up, and we'll see kind of where it ends up landing, because I honestly I don't know at this point where it's gonna shake out. I really enjoyed my time with it when it was working, and when it wasn't, given the stuff that they were trying to do, I get why it wasn't, compared to something like After Party, where I was like, they've clearly already cut so much out of this game. Why is it still chugging in the way that it was? It'll be, that's what I'll get to like weigh and wrap my head around over the next couple days as I sit down to work on the review for Ori and the Will of the Wisps. But I really enjoyed it, and especially if you have a PC or Xbox One X, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. If you only have a base Xbox, I'd still recommend it, but with the caveat of it's probably going to crash on you. You're probably going to deal with some frame rate issues and some freezing and bugs and stuff like that. But hopefully it doesn't. Like there was one moment, and ultimately, like in the end, I realized I could have gotten out of there. But there was like one sequence where I kept dying. And I was like, did the game freeze me, or did the game like quick save me in a location where I'm screwed and I can't get out of this? Because that was something that notoriously had happened in the first Ori game. Was like, it was very easy to get the game to quick save you in a place, and you would load back in and immediately die, and you'd have to probably restart the game. This version has way more like backups in the way of quick save, so in the one sequence that I ultimately realized I could have gotten out of but didn't, I was able to like reload a save from like 15 minutes earlier where I hadn't gotten into that section. So like that's something I think that's also like super small number of people are actually going to need it or want something like that. But it's another thing that I was appreciative that it was there when I did encounter potentially like, oh crap, I don't want to have to start the game over again. Way easier to go back 15 minutes than 5 hours or something like that. So yeah, Ori and the Will of Wisps, real good game. Just some performance struggles that hopefully they continue to patch and work on. Anything else? I don't know where we're sitting at in terms of time. Yeah, we got some time. Do you want to talk a little bit about Bloodroots, Logan?
I can talk a little bit about Bloodroots. So working on my review for Bloodroots now, and I think in terms of games and my enjoyment and like the fun I've had with them, Bloodroots is kind of at the top of that list in among the last year and change. 2019 being kind of a weird year for games for me in terms of just like the kind of games I really love to play. There were a few, but not as much as kind of some of the years beforehand. And Bloodroots is it's a blast. I mean, I like one of the big surprises that I told Trevor about is the fact that the game is almost more of a puzzle than I thought it'd be in terms of like unlocking the levels to kind of figure out the best kind of combinations and routes to go to get kind of combinations of kills or just get kills in general, right? Like figuring out what weapons work best in certain scenarios or not. Like the game has just, I think, a sort of cleverness to it in its design and layout of enemies and weapons and just kind of obstacles in your path. I think that it's like a weird, like high speed version of like a Hitman game, which is really neat. And then mixed with the fact that like Bloodroots has a really great story. Like it doesn't have any right to, but it does. Like I really find myself like continuously more and more drawn into its world and its story and its characters that are introduced. It is and they're unabashed about this, inspired by Kill Bill, and what I think it does that is kind of a really cool evolution on that is that in Kill Bill, Uma Thurman's character she was part of that world and part of that group, but she's kind of unreservedly like the good guy, and she's kind of the hero, and that's kind of it. And they don't really look that much on her past except for to show that she was betrayed. Whereas in Bloodroots, like Mr. Wolf is shown to be like, like he was a bad guy, and like maybe he was the worst of all of us, and like maybe you are actually kind of not that good of a dude at all, and like maybe the reason they put you down is more complicated and like kind of multifaceted than just they wanted to betray you. Maybe each kind of individual character had their own reasons and desires to do so, and maybe some of them weren't entirely like terrible. Like maybe some of them were kind of deserved. And I think kind of shining this kind of more like gray moral spotlight on all of the characters, including yourself, is really fascinating and interesting. And I think also playing with the fact of like who is a reliable narrator versus who isn't, and like maybe the truth kind of being gleaned from each of them, and like it's all played out in like the background and like just kind of these conversations you have in between and after each mission. But I dig all of it. I love all of it. I think that it's such a well done story. I think the gameplay itself is fantastic. Again, it is Samurai Jack, it is Jackie Chan Adventures, it is Hitman, and it's gloriously over the top, absurdist, cartoonish. The art style I could look at every single day for the rest of my life. It's so beautifully drawn and rendered. And then just from the competitive aspect of it, with like again Trevor and Mario playing it and going back and forth to try to get the highest level, and me pre-launch trying to get to like the best like high score on like the leaderboards. It's just a game that I think offers up so much. It's super short, like there's not a ton to it. The only kind of negatives I have is that I had some performance hiccups, mainly just kind of some slowdown. And then one time it did kind of, I essentially had to pop out of the game because it kind of goofed up in terms of like how much it had slowed down where I couldn't play it at all. But that has been pretty few and far between. And otherwise, it's just been a blast. Like one of the probably the most fun I've had the game again in months. And yeah, like a thoroughly enjoyable thing. Again, you will be able to check out, just like as with Ori for Trevor, my full review. But it is great to borderline amazing. And so yeah, everybody go, please play Bloodroots. It's very
yeah,
good.
Real quick side note before I dive into my Bloodroots thoughts. One of the things that you talking just reminded me, and also kind of in the context of Ori, the other big thing that like the game that I spent like most of January playing was The Witcher 3, and that's a game that 5 years on was still crashing. Like I probably crashed as many times throughout my campaign in Witcher as with like the game just blue screening and then taking me back out to the main menu as I did in Ori. And so that like you just talking about like, oh yeah, some minor like hiccups and stuff just remind me like, oh yeah, this is also something that isn't guaranteed to get patched out of these games, because obviously they've done plenty of patching in Witcher, but. And again, that goes to like the grandiosity of the Witcher story and the 100+ hours that I put into that versus, Ori versus Bloodroots. But yeah, on Bloodroots in particular, Bloodroots is something that caught my eye probably like at first when Kind of Funny did like a party mode on it or something like that, and then I played it at PAX East last year and had fun like chasing that high score leaderboard thing on like day one with a couple people in the community, in particular like Kyle Stevenson from kind of NYC. He and I were going back and forth and joking about stuff, and then I saw I'd played through a handful of levels, and I think I'd moved away to sit down and play with some 2 Point Hospital, because I've been enjoying that as well, and then I saw Mario like tweet out that he was going to try and he'd done really well in his second pass at one of the bonus levels or something. He was going to try and get the high score on stream, and I was like, oh, I'm going to totally troll him. I'm going to load that level up and try and like beat his high score while he's chasing it down. And so I started doing it, and I was like, I don't see him anywhere. And it turned out I was playing the PS4 version, he was playing the Switch version, so we weren't on the same leaderboards anyway.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. So, but he was sharing out like his screenshots. I shared out mine when I got like the top time on the PlayStation side of things, for the leaderboard. And he was like, "Man, how like you're beating me by like a couple seconds. How are you doing it?" And I basically like used, for the first time ever, I used the like share video function of the PlayStation. I basically just did through a path. I messed up a couple spots here and there or whatever, so I didn't like get the high score captured, but I basically sent him like, here's what I did, and then he went back and used my path to get the high score on the Switch. And then like the next day I went back and like one-upped him. Last I checked, I have not gone back to the game to check this, but like when I set the record, I was like 3 seconds faster than anybody else in terms of the time record on that on that level, on the PlayStation. So I was like, I can leave it at that. So yeah, there is if you've got like friends that you're trying to like chase down, and like completely randomly on one of the levels, like when I was first playing through, like Game Over Greggy had beaten my like score by like 2 points or something. So he was like the one right above me on the overall leaderboard, not just like my friend's leaderboard. So I was like, God damn it, Greg. But yeah, so there is certainly that like high of trying to outdo your friends on the stuff, and in particular the one that I was going back and forth on with Mario was a bonus round where it's just a whole bunch of dummies you're taking out. So I'm not worried about like somebody else killing me in this, being killed by an errant, or by an enemy I didn't see there or something like that. So it was just like perfecting the path, figuring out like to what you're saying, like figure out the perfect solution to this puzzle that'll get you through it in the fastest time or get you the best combos or something like that. And it was just a ton of fun to try and like map that out and figure it out and try different techniques, or try, especially because like that one in particular, it's like you've got swords and you got guns. Which one do you want to use in that strategy? And I was trying it, for the longest time with like swords, because I was like, I could cut through a couple enemies. I could, move quickly through the air with a sword. But then at some point I switched to using the gun. I was able to like take out like a guy completely off screen because I knew the general direction to aim at and all that stuff. And so yeah, it was very much, I had a good time just kind of going through that same level, 40 times to, outdo Mario's score or something like that, and chase that, that leaderboard slot. So yeah, it's definitely fun. I've not gone back since. I think that was like the end of chapter 1, I think, in that story. So I'm still very early on in the story of it. So I can't speak to that as much, and also I don't have the necessarily the Kill Bill kind of touch point, because I'm not a huge not Scorsese, Tarantino. I'm not a huge Tarantino fan by and large, so I just haven't seen the Kill Bill movies. But I know them well enough to know the reference that you're kind of making there. So yeah, it's definitely something. I don't think of the story when I think of that game, but it's cool to know that there is a story behind
it's actually
it as
like
well
really
that kind
deep.
of helps drive it.
One final thing I want to talk about too, because it's the thing that like first made me fall in love with when I kind of like locked onto it last year at PAX, is I think part of what really separates Bloodroots and really makes me love it in comparison to like Hotline Miami or Hitman or any of these kind of other games in a kind of similar vein is its sense of momentum, I think, and speed, right? Like, to me, Bloodroots is all about kind of like never stopping and always kind of hits together and comes together in like kind of one continuous motion. And I think that ability to tap into momentum almost as its own weapon and its own kind of toolkit is really, really, really unique, I think, and engaging and clever. And how they utilize that and how they, I think, tap into momentum as its own kind of thing is continuously one of my favorite aspects of the game, whether it is rolling a barrel through people and then jumping off and doing these other kind of things, or just like as an actual like animation itself to like hurtle you literally to like the next area of a map. Like momentum and speed is such an like ingrained aspect of Bloodroots, and is one that continuously leaves kind of this goofy smile on my face. Like it is almost Sonic-esque. It is all about speed, all about going faster. And it is just, it is an absolute blast of a video game.
Yeah. A lot of fun on Bloodroots. Couple last little things I just want to give a little bit of shout out to, because I probably won't have a more in-depth look at them. I mentioned in that 2 Point Hospital is a game that I've had my eye on since it got announced.
For like a year now, yeah.
I own it on PC, even though I don't play PC, just because I wanted to support these guys as a team. The game came out back in like 2018 on PC, so it had been announced I think earlier that year, but it finally came to console a few weeks back, and I've just been putting a ton of time into that. It's been a lot of fun. 2 Point Hospital is a hospital simulation game by former Bullfrog guys who had done Theme Hospital, which was one of my favorite games growing up when I was back into PC gaming, because it's got like just this tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. I loaded it up while we were at PAX just to show you guys like here's the style of it kind of thing. It's got a very kind of Wallace and Gromit-esque animation style. And it's got very British humor to go along with that. But yeah, the game is just a matter of like, you're trying to, min-max your hospital, train your doctors up in the right skills, because people will come in and some of the tongue-in-cheek like illnesses that they've come in with are like one of the first ones that get introduced is lightheadedness, where everybody has a light bulb for a head, and you basically stick them into a machine that turns their head off, and then like replaces it with a real head. You have was it like something jest, I think, and it's basically like they're a clown and you have to like put them into a circus tent that like Clockwork Orange style basically like pulls the humor out of them and turns them back into a normal person. There's like I think one of the key ones that I'm looking at right now on the level I'm at is like monochrome or something like that, where they're all in grayscale and you basically have to put them in a machine that like adds color back into their bodies. It's just like weird stuff like that that like is just fun and funny. And gives you something to kind of strive towards gives you something to as you also strive towards like coming up with the best hospital and getting great doctors and all that stuff. Just a lot of fun and a throwback kind of game from something that I played in my childhood that I'm having a lot of fun with here now that it's on console. It's a lot of fun to hop into that. And then the other little thing I wanted to give a shout out to is Onward, the latest Pixar film. Went and saw that like the day before I saw Emma, I think. I think it was like a weekend of I saw Onward one night and then I saw Emma like a night or two later. really enjoyed Onward.
Good. Awesome.
Like the premise of the movie, for those that don't know, is these kids, like, it is a fantastical world with like elves and magic and stuff, but magic has been kind of weaned out of the world over the years in favor of technology, which was newer and easier, and people didn't have to work as hard for the technology, so magic kind of faded away. But their dad was into magic and basically created a spell that when he was ill, effectively, and dying kind of when they were very young, that basically would bring him back for like one day to meet the kids when they were 16. And they start casting the spell and it goes awry, and they only bring him halfway back, so they're basically got a pair of legs that are their dad with them, and they have a day to finish the spell and bring him back. And it's this very like heartwarming and touching story about like the love of the two brother main characters, Ian and Barley. Ian's kind of shy and reserved, and Barley's outgoing but also like nerdy. Like he's very into a Dungeons and Dragons-esque game that is based on like the real lore of the world, and they end up using that to kind of train Ian when it's revealed that he has like this magic ability. And so it's very much kind of a brotherly road trip as they try and set off on this quest to finish bringing their dad back, and very touching and heartwarming. Has great elements of that, Pixar magic. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. And I ended up seeing it a second time with my dad and sister. They also really enjoyed it. So yeah, like another one I highly recommend checking out.
Awesome. Yeah, I might do that actually.
It's a very especially for like it's seemingly a Pixar movie, very like small cast, in that it's like the promos would always be like, oh, it's Chris Pratt, it's Tom Holland, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and it's Octavia Spencer, and like there aren't too many other actors in the thing. I think there's like maybe the total cast list is like 12 or 13 or something like that. There's a few other characters that they encounter on their quest, but it's mostly about the two boys, and then the mom kind of is in pursuit, trying to track them down as they go on their quest, kind of thing. So yeah, highly recommend. Beautiful design, and I love the premise of it initially. Like when I first saw the trailers of like this magical world that like technology has kind of overrun, and so you see unicorns being like the raccoons of this world, where like they're dumpster diving and stuff like that. It's just I love fantasy, and I would love to see like what fantasy feels like in the real world today. So something like this kind of really spoke to me on that level. So really enjoyed Onward. Highly recommend to anybody to go check out, especially if you love like Pixar magic and Pixar movies. Yeah.
I love that.
So yeah, that's what I had. And anything else you want to kind of give a shout out to or some love to, Logan?
Ooh, I want to give a shout out to just like Hell's Kitchen forever and always. Shout out to my boy Gordon Ramsay out there making good content. I've been watching a lot of Hell's Kitchen recently.
Okay.
That's it.
How's Survivor been going?
Also great. It's an all-winter season, guys. Do you understand that? Boston Rob for life. All right. Sorry to Amber. Boston Rob.
Sorry to Amber.
Yeah.
Did she get eliminated or something?
And Amber was Boston Rob's wife. Spoiler alert, she got eliminated in the second episode. But, she already had won once, so she already got $1 million. Also, Boston Rob won once, so he's got $1 million. So they got $2 million. So, they got Boston Rob's in the competition. The Beach already won once. It's okay. Rooting for Boston Rob to win again. It's going to be great. I believe in it. You believe in it.
I don't, actually. I don't really care one way or the other.
Shout out to Jeff Probst. Always in forever.
There you go. Did you see... I saw like some kind of news story, and I thought of you. Basically, Jeff Probst sending out like a message to the crew of Survivor that because of Corona concerns, they're gonna go on hiatus for the next season or whatever. They're basically delaying production because of it.
I didn't see it actually. No.
I'm pretty sure I saw that like pop up somewhere in my feed. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, again, like everything. I mean, I guess like be safe, obviously with Corona, but yeah, like I didn't see that.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, shout out to Survivor for your love of it, and Hell's Kitchen, I guess. Which is, I didn't know you were a chef, Cooking with Ramsay kind of.
I'm a
fan.
huge Gordon Ramsay fan. Like, I'm massive. Like, me and Shaw are each massive Gordon Ramsay fans. When at some point in time, I'll do like a top 10 ranking of Gordon Ramsay shows. Whenever Survivor ends, I'll for sure in the podcast again and give you its placement in terms of the all-time Survivor hierarchy. But great, it is a dream Survivor pitch I had always wanted, and I still probably will write something up about it at the end of the season. Maybe two things about like its just overall cast and also where it goes in a seasonal structure. But Survivor's great.
There was for last week for that D Plus show. I just kind of sat down and watched by myself a Into the Grand Canyon documentary.
Yeah, I would have loved to have watched that. Yeah,
I mean, definitely check it out.
Yeah,
it's a really cool and it's like hour and a half kind of story of these two guys basically trying to go or like doing the trek of the walking the Grand Canyon floor basically. Mm-hmm. But one of the suggestions. Because I was delving into National Geographic land of D Plus, Disney Plus, was there was like a Gordon Ramsay show in there, so it was like 7 other we're examining this really cool location kind of thing, and then one that was like Gordon Ramsay and like exotic cuisine or something like that. I don't know, but I was like, I didn't even think about something like that being on Disney Plus, but there you go, it's out there. So so also shout out to Into the Grand Canyon. Cool little Disney Plus documentary.
I will check
that I
that
sat
out
down
for sure.
and watched for that D Plus show. So yeah, that's I think that'll wrap up this episode. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Logan, for sitting down with me. It's also always nice just catching up.
Yeah, always.
So let us dive in. Anything to plug? You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything to shout out or plug?
The Bloodroots review, obviously, that'll be coming. Also, all of the PAX content we've been doing. Again, I want to give a shout out to Frank and Christian for just all the video stuff that they've been doing and working on and edited on. It's a lot of work, and they've been doing a great job on that. You can go check out the Hindsight 2020 preview that went live as of recording this. Is the most recent thing, I believe, that went up. You can go check out all the other reviews. The Raji and Ancient Epic video combo with me and Cam will go up sometime this week. And then we're kind of doing the last bit of PAX content this week, I believe. So go check all of that out. I'm gonna have one more preview, written one, that is combining the Forest Cathedral and also another game. I just can't remember right now. So go check that out. It's very good.
Were you gonna write about Season?
No, I think I'm gonna let Frank do that, or Frank will have his.
Frank has his video piece on.
Yeah. But Season is great. You should definitely keep an eye out for Season. And then also, beyond PAX and beyond everything else, I'm thinking, I have my idea. I'm going to start doing more like lists. I want to rank some things. I'm in the process of, because it takes time, doing a top 10 Sylvester Stallone movie list. And let me just tell you what, boys and girls, it's lit. I was talking to somebody at work about it too, who like is just literally like makes movies in his spare time. It's gonna be great, guys. I'm real excited about it. Sharpie's excited about it too. She doesn't know about it yet, but she's gonna be excited about it. And yeah, so I'm gonna have that in the pipeline. Have a few more ranking things I want to do as well. Like I said, particularly one about Survivor and Gordon Ramsay, and just lots of fun things. Lists are fun. I like lists. I like ranking things. And I haven't got to kind of stretch that muscle in a while, so keep out for that one, in particular the Sylvester Stallone one. Trevor, what about you?
The other podcast I recorded this morning was the
I was going to say
video game list show.
That also got me in it for sure too. Yeah,
still in the like ranking mindset. I'm not having to rank this season, so that's nice. But I have been called upon one time so far to be the tiebreaker when it came down to like this game or that game from the panel. So check that out as well, because lists are fun, especially when we have people like negotiating with one another which games to get higher on the list and all that kind of stuff. Good fun times. I wonder if it's more fun ranking as part of a team there, or if it's more fun ranking just by yourself. Probably by yourself. At least you're going to be happier with the results when it's just your list compared to other people. But still some fun conversations on that show. So shout out to that Ultimate Video Game List Show Season 2. Shout out to that D Plus show, and that anime pod. Pretty much all the shows we're doing.
All the content.
There was not an episode of That Wannabe Film Class, or not a normal episode of That Wannabe Film Class this last week, which meant I was actually able to listen to the entirety of that one with because it was just Ben and Chloe talking for like 10 minutes while Chloe was visiting Ben, and they were basically couldn't go anywhere because everything was closed with coronavirus concerns. So they kind of had their rent, like, but they didn't have time or couldn't sit down and do all the like research that goes into a normal That Wannabe Film Class episode. So yeah, just check out all the stuff, and then as Logan said, all of the PAX stuff that we're still cranking out, because we didn't get too much out that like first week back from PAX because everybody was recovering, and we had basically disaster strike some of our files, in that like we completely lost the audio from the original episode that was going to break down all of the things we did at PAX. Womp womp. But that was what last week's episode kind of fixed, I guess. So we're still trickling out the last of our PAX East content, the previews and stuff here and there. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Check out thatnerdysite.com for the latest and greatest content from us. Any potential lists that we have coming up, or any of that kind of stuff. Lists, reviews, previews, all that fun jazz. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, and maybe even consider supporting us on patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode is our PAX East Memories Part 2. That was Cameron, Christian, and Frank discussing kind of their PAX memories and highlights, as a follow-up to the one Logan and I had done in the prior month. So check out that if you are a patron, or become a patron to support and check that out. So thank you again, Logan, for joining me. Thank
Always.
you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.